What's the deal, family? Welcome back to the channel. Today we got another banger for y'all, man. So look, we got why driving in Europe is better than America, and American expats' perspective. All right, about to run this up one time for the one time. So recently, some of y'all may know this, some of y'all may not. But I took a vacation to Spain. That was last month. I went there for about 3 weeks. Over there, that was my first time actually being in Europe ever. That was my first time ever. And I was only in Spain. I went to like a few different places over there. One thing that I noticed immediately being out there is that the way people drive, even the way pedestrians walk around in the street, just the way traffic works in general, is a lot different. It's a lot different than in America. The one thing about Spain is that they do drive on the same side of the street versus I know in other places in Europe it's on the opposite side. So at least in Spain, people drive on the same side as they do in America. But just the way people drive, the way lights work, the way traffic works, the way people stop and go and drive with each other in the streets is definitely a lot different than in America. And that was something I noticed. So we're going to check out this video, see what this guy's perspective is. And if you guys got more videos you want me to react to, hit the like button, subscribe, all that good stuff. Get at me in the comments.
I love driving, and I especially love driving in Europe. I've been living in Europe for about 2 years now, originally from Orlando, Florida. I've lived in Amsterdam for about 2 years now. Amsterdam isn't exactly a car place, but I've always been a car person, and I've always loved driving. What I like about living in Europe is that European drivers are excellent, especially compared to American drivers. I was inspired for this video after watching a video by Tedward, which I'll link in the description below. In his video, he was explaining why Americans don't use a 3-lane highway correctly, and it got me thinking how much I appreciate driving in Europe. European drivers are some of the best I've seen, and I think some of the best in the world, and I'm hoping to explain why I believe so in this video. Now, I haven't done any research. This is just my experience, so if I'm wrong about anything, please correct me in the comments. This is just my perspective, having lived in Europe for 2 years, having driven mostly around Western European countries, such as Netherlands, Switzerland, France, Germany, UK, and in the US, I primarily have driven in Florida. So Florida's not exactly known for the best drivers, especially we get a lot of tourists who don't know how to drive in the US.
I was gonna say, bro, when I was in Florida, people in Florida drive crazy. I ain't gonna lie. People in California drive crazy too, but it's just a different type of crazy in Florida compared to Cali. In Cali, there's a lot more traffic too, so because of that, you know what I mean, you just be stuck in traffic, stop and go and shit. So it is a little different over here too.
And a lot of elderly folks, and just people who don't know the right rules of the road. So that's my benchmark. That's what I'm comparing against. One of the main reasons I think European drivers are better is just driving in general is a privilege. So if you look at most European places, most European cities, you don't need a car. You don't need to drive anywhere.
That's true.
Public transportation is well established. You can use a train, a metro, a tram to get pretty much anywhere you need to go. You can use public transportation to get pretty much anywhere, so you don't really need to drive. Only if you live in more suburban parts of Europe, but even then public transportation is still available. So Europeans don't have to drive. They want to drive. And because they want to drive, they put more effort into it. On top of that, getting a driver's license in most European countries is a much more involved and expensive process. For example, in the Netherlands, getting a driver's license can cost a couple €1,000 because you have to.
God damn! You $2,300 to $3,700 to get your L's, bruh? Yeah, dog, I'm on that bus with it, bro. I'm on that tram, bro. I'm on the whatever, dog. The metro, whatever y'all got, I'm on that. Cause $3,700, dog. I mean, dog. To get your license in America, you got to pay $200. You take a course. You pay $35 for the license. You go take the test. You know what I mean? They give you the car if you don't got one. Like, it's real. Like, at the most, you might spend like $500. I think that's like expensive. Like, I don't even think you got to spend $500 to get your license in Cali. $2,300, bro. I'm on the bus with it. I'm on that bus, bro. Give me the pass, bro. The year pass, whatever, dog. Fuck that. God damn.
Have to do mandatory driving lessons. On top of that, the age to get a driver's license is much older than most states in the US. So I believe in the Netherlands you can start learning to drive around 16 and a half years old. That's when you do your theory test and then you start doing driving lessons. You don't have a full driver's license without restrictions until you're 18 years old. Compared to Florida, where I'm from, you start driving at 15, you do your theory test and you start driving at 15, and you only have to have a learner's permit for 1 year, and there's no mandatory driving lessons. Your parents can teach you how to drive.
This is true.
On top of that, the cost in general for driving is much lower. Cost of getting a driver's license is much lower in the US. And driving is kind of a necessity in a lot of parts of the United States, except for major metropolitan cities. You have to drive. So getting a driver's license is less of a privilege in the US and more of a necessity.
Facts. I agree.
So that distinction alone, I think, contributes to a lot of the differences that I'm going to point out. So getting a driver's license is a much more involved process, especially in countries like the Netherlands. In Germany, it also requires mandatory lessons. It costs a lot of money. So when they invest that much into getting a driver's license, they don't want to lose it. They learn to drive properly. They learn the right rules of the road. They don't want to do anything to jeopardize that, and they drive accordingly. You can see here in this example, I'm just outside of Amsterdam. There's nobody cruising in the left lane. I'm driving at 5:30 in the afternoon right now. Nobody is cruising in the left lane. The left lane is only for passing. You can see how people use the lanes. They're very well disciplined. And that's a common theme. They're well-disciplined drivers. This goes back to how they learn to drive. They have to take mandatory lessons. Their parents aren't teaching them to drive. Their parents aren't passing on bad habits about driving. They're learning the proper rules of the road. They're executing them while they learn to drive. So even though you take a theory test in the US on what the rules of the road are, you don't really remember that. You remember what you learned while you were learning to drive. And oftentimes that's from what your parents taught you. And that's not the case in Europe. You'll see here the highway just widened up and people immediately start moving to the right. Not everybody, but most people do. Nobody's fighting.
This is what I'm noticing, bro, because in America, bro, it's the worst shit in the world, bro. People will be in this left lane driving like this car. That shit be killing my soul, bro. Oh my God. Like, dog. Because I'm a speed guy, bro. I'm cutting up, you know, I'm doing my thing. I know how to drive pretty well. So I'm cutting up, I'm doing my thing, like I'm going crazy. You know what I mean? Controlled chaos, bro. I'm over here, I'm whipping, bro. So I'm over there left lane immediately when I hop on the freeway. I'm trying to go. I got places to be. But people will be in the left lane cruising like this in a minivan with 37 kids up in there. Ain't got nowhere to go. You know what I mean? Like, get your ass up over here on this right lane and go cruise and go look at some shit. Let me get your ass out my way. Let me get up in my left lane so I can be like this Range Rover and I'm going to get to where I need to go. And then they be mad at you when you be on when you trying to get around them and they over there cruising. They be looking like you crazy. I'm looking at them like, where are you going? Get your ass in that right lane, man. What you doing? So, yeah, that's one thing I did notice in Europe as well is that people use the left lane like you're supposed to use the left lane. People use the right lane like you're supposed to use the right lanes.
Nobody's rushing. They're just following the rules. They're well disciplined. Don't get me wrong, not everybody follows every rule. You can see there are some more aggressive drivers sometimes, but it's not the norm. And even the more aggressive ones tend to get on their way, get out of the way. They're not messing with anybody. They're not pissing anybody off.
Yeah, that's
There's
how
no
it's
real
supposed
road
to be.
rage.
I'm trying to go.
So discipline is one of those key important attributes. The next thing is the roads in general. The roads are well maintained. I'm going off of what I've seen in the Netherlands and Germany. Not every European country has the same privilege. I've seen some pretty poor roads in countries like Belgium, um, and even I've heard in Italy roads aren't as nice. But you can see here the highway is well maintained. There are no potholes. It's quite wide, and people use the lanes correctly. Um, so even though there's a lot of lanes, it allows for a lot of capacity because people actually follow the rules of the road. They stay to the right, they only pass on the left, they pass and then they get back over. And that's the general way it works here. So when they add more lanes, when the highway is wider, it allows for much more free-flowing traffic, a lot more capacity, a lot more cars. Unlike places like Houston where they added lanes, nobody follows proper rules there, so they continue to sit in the left lane, even if it's 16 lanes wide, and it doesn't help the traffic situation at all. In this area, this is a speed controlled area, so it's actually controlled by average speed cameras. I'll deep dive into that in a separate video, but the Netherlands has some of the strictest speed laws in Europe. Talking about the rules of the road, when you look at truckers, they also follow the rules very strictly in Europe. They're almost always all the way to the right. They rarely are passing. There are zones where they're not allowed to pass. They're rarely in the left lane. They're rarely passing. When they do pass, they get back over to the right lane immediately. There's less clogging of traffic. So discipline, learning the rules of the road, following them, these are important themes. The process to get a driver's license is much more involved, much more strict. Another thing with driving in Europe, in my opinion, the cars are much more solid. They're much more roadworthy. You have vehicle inspections, so people can't drive old, beat-up cars. You have to have your vehicle inspected ever so often. Depending on the age of the vehicle, it's either once a year.
One thing that I will say, when I was in Spain, I barely ever saw any fucked up cars driving. Like in America, we call them buckets. If you got a messed up old ass car, all dirty, fucked up, got it's messed up and it's old, man. You know what I mean? And it ain't like, yeah, it's just messed up and it's old. We call them buckets. You see buckets all the time, especially in LA, bro. I mean, it's expensive. Fucking people poor and shit. Like, it's fucking hard out here. You see a lot of buckets. When I was in Spain, I don't know if I can't even think of like a time where I saw a car. I was like, damn, that car's messed up. That car's fucked up. Or they need to go repair that shit. Nothing. And especially driving. I ain't seen nothing like that really at all. It's kind of, now that I'm thinking about it, it's kind of crazy. I can go walk outside right now and I'll see 10 buckets on the street just walking outside right now. And I don't even live in a poor area, to be honest. So it's like, that shit's crazy.
Here, once every few years. There's rules about what the vehicle can or can't have equipped on it. It has to pass inspection for you to keep driving it on the road. So the roadworthiness of vehicles is also better. And some states have this. Florida in particular doesn't have this. So you see people driving on the highway with rickety vehicles that are falling apart.
Yeah.
They've gotten into an accident and they haven't fixed the vehicle. It's a road hazard, in my opinion. That doesn't happen here. People maintain their cars well in the first place. They have to maintain them well because to keep driving them on the road, they have to pass the inspections. Germany has some of the strictest inspection laws. You can see many videos on YouTube about passing the TÜV inspection. I haven't had to go through this personally in the Netherlands, but I do know that inspections are required. I haven't seen any poorly maintained vehicles on the road. And because of this, because of the discipline, because of the roadworthiness of the vehicles, generally Europe has higher speed limits. The Netherlands used to have a national speed limit on the highway of 130 kilometers an hour, which equates to 81 miles per hour. People used to drive faster than that. Recently, as of March of 2020, there's a national speed limit of 100 kilometers an hour until 7 p.m. Some roads are still 100 kilometers per hour in general. I'll do a separate deep dive into that in another video about the Netherlands. But in general, countries like Germany or France, the highest speed limit you'll see on suburban highways is 130 kilometers an hour. And people drive faster than that. You can easily drive 140 kilometers an hour without any issue. And again, if everybody follows these rules of the road, driving that fast, even on narrow highways, isn't an issue. You can also see in the Autobahn, people driving much faster than that. It's a 2-lane highway, yet there's very little accidents. And that goes back to the discipline of following the rules of the road. People keep to the right. Even if somebody is driving faster than you, it's completely safe. I'll have to do another video about the Autobahn because that's a whole experience in and of itself. As an American, I truly love and appreciate the Autobahn, and I wish that America had that privilege, but honestly, the drivers don't deserve it. Another reason driving in Europe is...
Can somebody explain to me exactly what is an Autobahn? Just throw it in the comments. Let me know. I don't... Like, I've seen two-lane highways plenty of times. Like, going to Vegas, there's a big-ass two-lane highway to get to Las Vegas from California, from L.A. But, it sounds like he's talking about something different, so let me know in the comments.
Is so much better. Again, going back to the discipline, you'll see this as a common theme. There's very little distracted driving. People are focused on driving while they're driving. They're not on their phones, they're not eating, they're not really drinking coffee, they're not reading a book, they're not doing all of these crazy things you see people in America do while they drive. They're focused on driving. And they have to be focused on driving. You're not allowed to be using your phone. You're not allowed to be eating while you're driving. You're not allowed to be doing anything but driving while you're driving. In fact, in the Netherlands, they started rolling out a system where there are cameras over the highways that will look at cars and take pictures. If you're caught driving while you're on your phone or doing something while you're distracted while you're driving, they'll actually mail you a ticket. So they're very strict about enforcing no distracted driving.
That's good. That's good.
And people follow it. People focus on driving. And when you focus on driving and you have drivers that are focused on driving, you can have much more freedom and much more driving enjoyment. So distracted driving isn't really a thing here, and it's really well enforced. I think that helps contribute to some of the driving characteristics of some of the roads. People are much more focused. So there aren't really distractions while you're driving. You're focused on driving, you're paying attention, and this is part of the reason why there are some things you really need to pay attention to while you're driving in Europe. Things like roundabouts, things like speed humps, things like pedestrian zones, bicycle lanes, trams, buses, horses that are allowed to be in traffic, a lot of different things that you need to pay attention to, and that's why you really need to pay attention while you're driving. And Europeans do in general. Now, as an American driving in Europe, I am guilty of carrying over some of my bad habits about distracted driving. But when I need to pay attention, I pay attention. And I've always thought of that in the US as well. I pay attention while I'm driving. I focus on driving. I get pleasure out of that. And that's the norm here in Europe. You drive when you're driving. You're not doing anything else. It's not a time when you're, catching up on emails or reading a book or eating your lunch. You can see here, this is one of these roads that's almost one car width wide. It shares a bicycle lane, and this is a bi-directional road. You really have to pay attention here. You have to mind the space. If a car's coming in the other direction, you have to squeeze to the right and make sure there's enough space. But when the road is empty like this, you can enjoy it. One difference with Europe, generally people don't use cars to commute. Don't get me wrong, there are a lot of people that do commute to work by car in Europe and European cities, but in general, cost of parking is very expensive. Fuel is very expensive. People don't use a car to commute if they don't have to. So people will often defer to public transportation to get to work. So people aren't driving regularly as much as they do in the US. So usually when they're driving, it's for pleasure, not so much necessity. Of course, it's maybe necessity to go somewhere, but they're focused on driving while they're doing it. It's not part of their morning commute. And this is generally speaking.
Damn. Police about to get somebody. One thing I noticed about at least in Spain too, with the driving was that or just with the commuting by people in general, is that there's way less of a stigma for the bus. Like taking the bus and the trains and things like that. Like taking public transportation, everybody's doing it. Business people, people going to work, people going here, people going there. In America, there's like a stigma to taking the bus or taking public transportation. People look down on you, or they think you're poor, or don't have money, can't afford a car. Or they think you're struggling if you take the bus. Like, a well-known thing that people talk about, at least in LA, I can't speak for every place in America, but at least in LA and other big cities, it's like there's a stigma that like only homeless people take the bus. Like only homeless people are on the train, fucking crackheads and shit like that. So there's a big stigma around like public transportation versus over there, You'll see a beautiful woman in a dress about to go to work at the office, nice clothes on, taking the bus or the train. Business guys, suit taking the bus or the train, as well as like younger kids, students, and people who just don't have a vehicle or something like that. But it's not a bad thing because a lot of people don't have vehicles.
This is my take. It's not scientific, of course. I like that I can choose to drive when I want to drive. I can enjoy driving. I'm lucky that I live in Amsterdam. I don't have to commute. I don't have to commute by car. Another thing I've noticed is when people are towing something or carrying cargo, it's well secured, it's covered with a net. Things don't fly out of trucks, things don't fly out of trailers. People, when they're towing something or when they're carrying something or hauling something, they're staying to the right, they're driving in the slower lane, they're not passing anybody, they're not driving erratically. I remember regularly seeing in Florida landscaping trucks with trailers with things that are just bouncing around, flying around, things that could fly off of the trailer in any second. And those guys are driving 80 something miles an hour in the passing lane, passing cars, driving erratically. That just doesn't happen here. When you consider some of the points that I've mentioned, driving in Europe is overall safer. If people follow the rules, it makes for a safer experience for cars, for pedestrians, for cyclists. It also makes for a better driving experience as a driver. And that's why I love driving in Europe. After a long road trip, I don't feel exhausted. I don't feel like I was dealing with a lot of bad drivers. I don't feel like I was dealing with a lot of people sitting in the left lane. I don't feel that fatigue that you feel when you drive in America. I actually feel quite relaxed while I drive. And it's because there's similar people like me driving, people who want to drive, people who enjoy driving, people who pay attention while they're driving. So I feel like I'm sharing the road with a lot of like-minded individuals. I also feel like driving in Europe, I've become a better driver. I've learned things that I didn't learn in America. Roundabouts, for example, dealing with cyclists regularly. Like I said, this is my personal experience. It's definitely not fact.
Cool. That was why driving in Europe is better than America. Shit, y'all heard my opinions. I agree. I think driving on the roads is just a lot less bullshit you deal with from what I can see. The 3 weeks I was there, it isn't a long time, but a lot less bullshit from what I noticed. And people drive like overall in the general like more consistently. There's not like everybody's driving similarly. You know what I mean? Not similarly, but there's some understanding there of how people are going to drive and how they're going to use the road, and it seems to be pretty smooth and consistent across the board. So yeah, that was my experience. I think I loved how the way they was driving, just a lot less bullshit you deal with, and less potential for road rage to occur, which is bullshit. So yeah, that's it right there. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Get at me in the comments, hit that like button, subscribe. Let me know more videos to react to. I love y'all. Appreciate y'all. Remember to keep it real. Real is rare, and real always reaches everyone. Next time. Peace.